Hey everyone. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, the biggest vibe check I got from this chapter is that the Emperors are on a collision course with each other, and one is trying to goad the other another into joining the fray. Because largely, this chapter is focused on Shanks and Blackbeard, but to start, I'll focus in on Shanks, because in this chapter, we see the red hair pirates essentially torture Bartolomeo for actions he committed much earlier in the manga, and I think it was actually even in some cover stories, but yeah, for actions he committed of burning down the flag on one of Shanks' protectorate countries, trying to replace it with Luffy's. Now, this'll be a first for me, but Shanks, fuck you for what you've done to our boy. Seriously, fuck you for that. I'm sorry, I can forgive you for a lot, you're a badass, but seriously, you do not touch, what you did to Bartolomeo, that was fucked up, dude. But, okay, fanboyism aside, where things start to get interesting with this confrontation is with the fake poison, because Shanks offers Bartolomeo a vial of poison to give to Luffy, and saying that this is the only way in which he can condemn he can be forgiven for his actions. But instead, Bartolomeo guzzled it down in protest, saying he'd rather die than do anything to harm Luffy. Now, ultimately, we learned the vial wasn't poisonous, but Shanks still destroyed Bartolomeo's ship in in response to his actions, as he and his crew, just as he and his crew were escaping. Now, this is this is the kind of thing that gets me to believe that Shanks is doing one or both of two things, which is he's trying to test Luffy, but also wanting to gain his attention. And a lot of the reasons for this, I think, does circle back to Blackbeard, which is to say, Shanks has been honing in on Teach for so long and keeping an eye on him that I think at this point he realizes Teach is making big moves, and that the world only has a limited time frame in which to stop him. Now, but because but even Shanks, I think this is Shanks's way of accepting that even he, for all his power, all his supposed allies, even he is not strong enough in order to face Blackbeard alone. He needs Luffy's help, or more specifically, he needs Luffy's help, but also that of the help of his Straw Hat fleet. But he knows Luffy enough to know where he won't just call upon his he won't just call upon his fleet or meet with Shanks unless given a reason to. Or so I think Shanks is trying to force Luffy's hand, and just kind of force a reason in order for Luffy to meet him. At least that's how I've read this whole scenario. But with Shanks nowadays, it's hard to tell. But in moving on to the other half of this, and kind of crossing over from all of that, we also catch up with Blackbeard, where we learn that even though Kobe escaped, Garp is still very much alive, but now a captive in place of Kobe. So combining the fact that Garp is in Blackbeard's hands, combined with the fact that Caribou is on his way to the island with information on Shutoji's little secret, you can kind of see where Shanks' fear is starting to come into play. That a lot of Blackbeard's plans of him, and a lot of Blackbeard's plans and all of his preparations to make a big assault on the government are truly coming into form. And I think more than anything, that's the reason Shanks is trying to get Luffy's attention, because Shanks knows that what Teach is doing also involves the government, who Luffy has had some less than stellar interactions with, but he still needs to convince Luffy to help regardless of that fact, because because Teach's actions are going to affect both pirates and the government in a way. But among all the preparations Teach is making in order to start a war against the world, it is one thing that did stick out to me about this chapter more than anything else is that it truly is getting to that point where we need to at least start making moves to confront Teach, because with the story is getting to that point where even in this final arc where we're running out of, I think we're kind of running out of space in terms of major players to confront. Like Blackbeard, the Elders, and Emu are kind of the only only three major antagonistic players left who really serve as an obstacle. So it's one of those things where it would make sense if Oda is what I believe he's doing is trying to lay the groundwork for, at the very least, a first confrontation with Blackbeard. And like this, like we need to kind of set. It's one of those things where we kind of need to start setting the stage in order to start at least having a sort of having a confrontation, an initial confrontation with Blackbeard. We need Luffy with both Kid and Law out of the picture right now. It's almost coming down to the wire where Luffy kind of does need to confront Blackbeard at this point in order for the story to move forward, in order for progress from it, and in order for I think it's important for Luffy to face Blackbeard at this point in order to understand exactly what it is he's up against. Because well I don't think it's going to lead into like another time skip. It is like at least a very initial confrontation with Blackbeard is needed in order for Luffy to understand, okay, this is the power I'm up against. This is the power I need to defeat in order to truly push past, in order to make it to becoming Pirate King. Like this, Blackbeard is the final obstacle in all of this, and more than anything, it's something Luffy needs to understand. So that's why I'm hoping more than anything that Oda is setting up for at least an initial confrontation between the Straw Hats and Blackbeard. Of course, unfortunately, if this is the route that Oda's going for, then I'm also kind of more convinced than ever, especially after reading this chapter, that Shanks is a dead man walking. Like if Shanks is so desperate in order to face make sure Blackbeard can't, in order to defeat Blackbeard, that he's willing to like to face down, that he's willing to ask for help from Luffy too, possibly, then yeah, this to me is just kind of further implicating of Shanks' desperation, but also the idea that yeah, he needs to, that if Shanks is this desperate, then it's going to lead to his death in one way or another. Now, as for the rest of the chapter, yeah, this is where things get a little intriguing to talk about, because after a big party with the Giants, the end of the chapter cuts to Nami waking up dressed in Viking clothing inside a palace of some kind, which, I gotta say, for Nami to actually get blackout drunk, that definitely was not your average strength alcohol. Like, I don't think it was spiked necessarily, but definitely more powerful than what the Straw Hats have normally drank. Now, the question is, where is Nami right now? And my first guess would be the Elbaf Royal Palace. And if so, we may meet Prince Loki sooner than we thought. But if that is the case, gotta say, Oda rushed us to Elbaf faster than I thought he would. Maybe he's just very eager in order to get to Elbaf and just get started on leave behind Egghead and just get straight into Elbaf, which I can appreciate. Now, with that said, with that final page of Nami waking up inside of a palace, these implications kind of scare me a bit, because if we are in fact in Prince Loki's palace, I'm praying to God Oda isn't going the damsel route with Nami in Elbaf, to the extent where if Loki turns out to be the villain of this arc, then my biggest fear is it's going to be one of those things where Loki's entire motivation is gonna be around taking Nami as a bride or something. That Prince Loki was basically so distraught by Lola rejecting him that he's resorted to taking a bride by force if necessary. Like, I'm hoping I'm really, really hoping that's a non-existent part of his motivation, but if it is, then Oda needs to give us more. Oda needs to give us more than that. Of course, my rambling aside, we won't know for sure if this is Elbaf Palace until next week's chapter, most likely. But and if it is Elbaf Palace, if it is the Elbaf Royal Palace, I gotta say it's much more real than I expected. Then again, with us only having seen small areas of Elbaf up to this point, maybe the Royal Palace is much more differently constructed, like how the common folk live, because it is a common thing Oda likes to do, how royalty lives in these much more regal places, and the common folk live in not more desolate areas, but definitely much more just kind of standard house is much more like everyman standard kind of housing and whatnot. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. From my Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll, be sure to notification bell, subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight signing off. Later, everyone.